Welcome to The Independent Artist, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists, NAIA. I'm Douglas Sigworth. I'm a glassblower.
I'm Will Armstrong, mixed media artist. Join us as we explore the topics that affect the lives and livelihood of art show artists.
Douglas, it's amazing to see you here on the podcast once again. We both had busy weekends this past weekend, and we have a lot to talk about. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you, Will?
I'm feeling fairly high. I just finished Old Town. I've got Des Moines coming up. I've had an incredible week in the studio.
We're back, baby. We're back.
We're back. It feels strong. I know you had an open studio. How'd it go?
I had two big events, and both were these little private personal events. The first weekend was a collector called me up and said, hey, I really want to help out the artists, and I have 3 artists that I want to do a little private showing of. And so we went to their house and set up in their yard, and It was great. And then we did our own open studio last week where I invited 3 other artist friends, and that was a whole different experience. It's pretty crazy.
That's amazing. I've had a client before that's been super excited about doing a home show, and those can be really successful. They bring their rich friends, and I hope it was good for you.
I had 2 completely different experiences. So that weekend was the first weekend in Wisconsin where the mask mandates were lifted. Basically, they said you can go out and about. You don't have to wear masks to stores anymore, or out in public is no big deal. We sent out to our mailing through the Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison area, and I'll tell you, our collectors came out in droves saying,
wow.
This is our first outing since the pandemic. We're so excited we can be doing this and being safe. They were spending money, and in a 6-hour little home show thing, we made the kind of sales that we would have driven across country for, so I can't complain. I was blown away by it. Super excited.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. I similar experience for Old Town. I feel like a lot of my friends had already done shows before, but for a lot of the Old Town folks and a lot of my little neighborhood, we hadn't been out. We hadn't done a show yet. We were the horse that the gate wouldn't open, and the race had been going on, and I'd been feeling like really chomping at the bit to get going. And Old Town didn't disappoint. Friday night was the first night that they'd lifted all mask mandates. The town went crazy. It took me, because of my leg and bringing my nephew, it took me, instead of like 2 or 3 hours, it took me closer to 5 or 6 hours to set up. So it was kind of a bear.
Plus, Will, it was the first time you were setting up in over 14 months or something.
Oh, yeah. It's the first time I'm setting up in 14 months. And then I'm doing it with my voice, you know? I'm not doing it with my hands. I can't do anything. And I'm telling him, put this here, put this there. And 2 things that I hate doing. I hate asking for help, and I hate bossing people around. So it was like, okay.
I'm good at both of those. So.
Okay, good. Maybe I should get you to help me set up my booth. But man, talk about some self-loathing at the end of the day. I'm like, also running my damn mouth for 5 or 6 hours. My voice was blown out.
Was it?
By Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I was all creaky, getting ready to talk to the humans.
I really had to kind of steel myself to the ups and downs that we were so used to over a year ago. You show up and you have these lulls, and we had a really successful event at the collector's home. But at my open studio show, it was like the complete opposite. It was like people trickle in, a little couple here, a couple there. I thought, we go back out there again, the floodgates are opened. But that isn't what I experienced. And I was kind of getting myself into a little bit of a funk. So I need to kind of get back on that roller coaster of playing the long game and not looking for that immediate kind of instant gratification.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like more of a gallery setting. A good buddy of mine that runs a gallery in Chicago, I've talked about in the past, but he talks about that long game. And it's different from an art show where you've there's this sense of urgency. You have all these sharks in the water, and they all want the same chum, and you're the chum, and they're like, oh my God, I got to get this art. I've got to buy this piece. If I walk down to the end of the street and think about it, somebody else might get it. And that's not the case in a gallery. It's like you walk in, you kick the tires, you think about whether or not you can live with it in your space. And
that's exactly what it was. But it really turned into almost like we were having a big party and socializing with collectors who we have relationships with, and I know will buy from us and have bought from us. But we spent probably an hour with everybody who came through, just talking about what have you been doing for the last year? How have things been going? And so it felt like we were really busy.
Yeah, sounds like kind of a special kind of event, and maybe not what you'd imagined, but long game wise, probably a pretty important thing to go through.
By the end of it, I was extremely inspired and enthused. I got a nice text from a good friend who said, may not be exactly what you're expecting, but it will be what it is, and it will be amazing. And does that sound familiar?
I didn't say that. I'm not.
Oh, that's right. That. Will Armstrong is not sentimental, ladies and gentlemen. He is a hard ass. I'm just kidding.
Oh, look at me. I'm a big softie. Hey, you know what was funny about Chicago and lifting all this stuff? So because we brought our nephew, we needed to look for digs downtown where we could do I'm a big... I don't want to give them a plug, but there's a hotel chain that has, a nice rewards program, and they always upgrade me. So I upgraded into a suite, with a pull-out couch for him, so we had enough room for everybody, nice. and went downtown. And plus, I don't want an assistant in my booth on Saturday and Sunday for sales day. I don't care what shape I'm in. If I'm at the show, I want to sell myself. Yeah. So, set up Friday, break down Sunday night, be there if there's a bad storm. That's all I want for an assistant. So I wanted him to be able to go downtown, but man, being downtown in Chicago when they lift the curtain of restriction, people didn't know how to behave. It was
like the masses, like the cattle are just...
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got 20-something girls, vomiting in the street. I'm like, honey, it is 9 o'clock. Like, what are you doing?
What?
Oh, yeah. Stumbling around, breaking heels, screaming.
That sounds more like the Wells Street crowd.
I mean, the whole city was Wells Street. It was crazy. So, people just didn't know how to behave. And that kind of parlayed into Saturday and Sunday at the show, because the typical flow of traffic that goes down the street, people were like goddamn bees, just like in the hive, just like they didn't know how to walk anymore. They're bumping into each other. It was a busy, busy weekend for a lot of people.
We're all relearning those kinds of unspoken things from years ago.
Well, it felt like Rip Van Winkle down from the mountain, too. Like I came down and styles had changed, too. Yeah. It's been a year and a half since the last show. And I'm like, so, okay, now instead of seeing your belly button, I can see the bottom of your butt. I'm like, okay, that's what jean shorts are doing now. It's like all this fabric up at the top and then the frayed fabric at the bottom. I'm like, what is even, nobody would have worn that a year and a half ago, and now it's the style. And I'm like, what is it, all this talk about style? I just felt like Rip Van Winkle rubbing his eyes.
I think it's maybe the vantage point you were sitting. You usually are up in probably a big director's chair, but now you're on the... sitting lower with your leg up, so you're just seeing it from a different angle, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. Speaking of my leg, I was really worried going into the festival because I didn't want to talk about my leg all week. And, of course, people were like, the lady that comes into your booth that looks at you and she stands right in front of you and just gives you an animated frowny face, oh, I'm so sad. What happened? And I'm like, get the out of here. I don't want, I'm like, what do you, but the amazing thing, Douglas, it's a huge tell. If you're interested in the actual artwork, you don't care about the leg.
Okay.
I just blew it off. Anybody that came into the booth, they're like, oh man, are you okay? Would be the question.
Yeah.
It'd be like, yep, I'm fine. Yeah. And we're like, hi, how are you folks doing today? And then they'd look at me, they'd see my crutches, they'd see my leg in a cast, and they'd be like, oh, man, how are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing okay. I'm halfway through it. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, just like bunion surgery. I'll be fine in 2 weeks. You don't have to totally minimize it.
Yeah, I just minimized it. And if they really were not interested and they just wanted to talk, they'd be like, well, what happened? Blah, blah, blah. But the people that were actually out and looking for artwork, they were like, oh, God, you okay? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. How's it going? And they're like, oh, good. And they'd blow it off. And then, it's not like they had a lack of empathy, but they weren't there to talk about my leg either. They were there to look for for paintings,
Yeah.
purchases.
Well, I like what you're saying about it being a tell, because we do have a huge amount of people who come to the shows who just are looking for social interaction, connection. They're really not coming to buy anything unless it's, maybe something that's an impulse buy kind of thing. But the people who come with that, I want to buy a nice painting for over my couch. It's like, the leg thing is something they'll ask at some point just to make sure you're fine and then move on to the business at hand.
They're there to get to work. They actually had work to do. And that was a huge tell for me, we were talking with David Oleski at the beginning of the podcast about masks taking away one of your tells.
Right.
It's like somehow this leg is actually a huge tell for me. Like if you don't care about it, then let's get to work.
You're my people.
Yeah, right? And it's like you can tell people about their shoes. Some people say that. I think that's nonsense. But because, boy, have I sold some paintings, some really nice work to some ragged out sneakers.
For sure. Yeah.
There are a couple of things that you snap to when you see. You're like, okay, all right, I see these people. They're in what your people look like.
Yeah. Well, that's adapting and getting back into it. That's one of the subtleties that don't always jump to mind when we do this business of how we do what we do until you're actually in that position and it kind of comes to mind. You're like, oh yeah, this is something I used to do. I used to be able to just read people.
Yeah, exactly. And I do feel like reading people a lot. I don't know. Maybe I haven't been invited to them, but I love playing poker. And I think it would be really fun to play poker with a bunch of artists. I don't know. We'd all be able to read each other and read the eyes and read the
body language
really Yeah, for sure. For sure. Douglas, I had a great show at Old Town. I could have had a much better one had I not gone through that whole leg thing. I mean, to tell you the truth, I only brought 9 paintings and I only went large, and they were mostly from taking them out of that gallery that I have in Chicago and just putting them right on the walls in my booth.
Right.
So it was a really good if you talk about percentages, it's like if I brought 9 paintings and I sold 4, if you walk away from a show and you sell almost 50% of your work, you're always excited.
For sure.
It was a great weekend. All of them had to be delivered, and I always find it interesting to see where your work is delivered, to see what the show draws from, and it's typically that neighborhood. So I had deliveries, and they all happened on Monday. I scheduled them for Monday morning so my nephew could come down and help me, and it reminded me of a story. Like I've told you in the past, how I don't like to say no in my booth, and it all kind of stems from this neighbor that I had a long time ago. I was doing the 3rd Street portion of St. James Court, and he was next to me all weekend, and he was kind of, he was a nice guy, and we're still friends, but he was really negative, and he was like, well, he was moping about if I had a coffee, even if I just poured a cup of coffee out of the Fairfield Inn swill bucket, he was like, well, it must be nice to have a cup of coffee. And I'm like, well, dude, go get a cup
That's a total wet blanket.
Oh, yeah, for absolutely everything, to the point where I'm like, I like the guy enough, but I had extra pro panels in my truck, and I threw up an extra wall, and I built a wall so I didn't have to talk to him anymore. But the whole thing, he was so negative.
Was that the what not to do kind of thing for you?
Well, it started that way, but it ends up being he had a terrible weekend. And I'm starting to break down, and it's 5:00. This guy comes into his booth, and he sees his showpiece, this guy's showpiece. And it's up on the wall, and it's like, it's one of these pieces that's going to save him. It's going to go from a 0 show to wow, it was a pretty good weekend. Cool. I mean, it's one of those sales. And he's like, the guy comes in, he's like, oh my God, I love that piece. And it's one of those sales that's so easy. Anybody could make that sale. Yeah. And I was like, it kind of like, I heard the guy, and it was like everybody, the hair stands up on your arm for those kind of sales. You're like, oh, I got this one.
They're reeling them in.
Oh yeah. And so he's like, man, I love that piece. He's like, I think, I'm imagining my beach house, and I could put it right over the door, right as the thing. I was like, I got the perfect spot. He's like, man, I think I have to have that piece. He's like, yeah, this is awesome. And then he goes, so have you had a good weekend? And it was like tumbleweeds down the street.
Yeah.
What is he going to say? And he goes, well, no, actually, I've had a terrible weekend. In fact, if you buy this piece, it's going to be my first sale all weekend. And the guy goes, oh, man, huh. Well, let me get your card.
Yeah, suddenly this piece that there was the connection and the love is like, am I the only one who likes this stuff? Maybe there's something wrong with it. Maybe I need to question my liking it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, now I'm like, he doesn't like it anymore. It's got a stink on it. He's like, well, let me get your card. Takes his card and he leaves. And the guy's like, I don't know what happened. And I was like, I do, because I just saw it. And I'd heard that whole Bruce Baker line about you don't say no in your booth. And I'm like, and that's when it kind of came home. I'm like, I'm never going to say no in my life. And it all brought home with this delivery that I had. I sold a really nice big painting. And like I said, I only had really big ones. So I sold a big painting and I brought it downtown and it's going in this gorgeous boardroom and it's like a finance themed piece and it's going on the wall. And the guy who bought it was really proud, but he's like, well, hey, did you sell that big piece that was on the wall? And it was a huge one, like took up my entire wall of the booth. It's a triptych. It was 6 feet tall by 9 feet wide. It's a monster. And he's like, did you sell that piece? And I was like, yes and no. I've got a couple of appointments to show it. I'm like, before I leave town, I'm going to go show that with another client. So I was like, get me in the door. I'm sure they're going to see it. It's going to be perfect. And he's like, oh, and he lit up and he's like, oh, awesome. Congratulations. And I talked to him about the other client and they were definitely maybes, but there wasn't necessarily an appointment set up. So it's a little bit of I don't know. My wife says, that's not a white lie. That's just a lie.
Well, I grapple with that too, because you want him to feel good about his purchase and feel like he bought from a successful artist. And I do find a way to say something that is true, but it would probably make me a politician. You know what I mean? Like if someone said, did you sell that piece? My reaction might have been like, not yet, but I've had so much interest in it. I know it's going to happen. You know what I mean? That I could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was true. I did have huge nibbles on that piece, and I think it's going to go to somebody in Old Town. But at the same time, I'm like, he needed to know at that point it wasn't, it was advertising. It was like advertising is, and I've said this before too, but advertising is more to make you feel good about the product you've already bought.
I remember that convo, absolutely.
Encourage you to buy it. And that was him. He wanted to know that he bought from a winner. And I'm like, I did have a great show. Did I sell that piece you're asking about? No, but I sold like 3 other big ones. And I'm like, I'm psyched about the whole weekend. It was a great weekend. And so
That's awesome.
he wanted to know, he wanted to know on the way to the elevator, are you a winner or is this the only painting you bought? I'm like, heck yeah, I'm a winner.
Right.
So it's like, if I've had a 0, somebody walks into my booth, have you had a good show? Yes, absolutely. I'm having a great show. If you walk into my booth and I'm taking one on the chin, I'm like, no, I'm getting freaking reamed.
Right. Well, that's a different story. Yeah.
Right. But, I don't know. When the humans walk in, I've got to be like, best face forward.
Totally. Well, I have to say, after my studio show experience this weekend, I have a whole new appreciation for show directors. I always have, but this is like front and center. I had to ride the ups and downs. I know how much my personal issues play into every show I do. If I've got delays with my traveling or I have to cancel or whatever, I know how much my situation requires special consideration. Now you multiply that by every single artist in the show.
Yeah.
These people are they really need more credit. And I only had 4 different artists coming.
So you're talking about actually herding the cats themselves and holding hands?
Yes, these are all my really close friends, so I'm not cutting any of them down, but they had we had truck breakdowns and we had last minute cancellations and we have health issues. And so all of those things played into the overall success of this event. And by the end of it, we were all like kumbaya, arms around each other, had a great time, and let's do this again, and let's get together and have a reunion. It was basically like an artist retreat. We bonded and we talked about our our year and all of the different things we've gone through with COVID and then being back out on the road. So it was so touching and so emotional, but the whole aspect of trying to produce an event. And the other thing about being a show director that was really getting to me was I wanted everyone to be successful. And I was like feeling the pressure and the responsibility that they all sold well. And if they weren't selling well, then I felt like I wanted to go hide. And it is a lot of pressure.
That is a lot of pressure. You take that you're an empath, which I've kind of picked up on over the last few months doing this project with you. And to see that, I think that is, that kind of boils down into something that I feel very strongly about. Like, let the people that know how to do the job. Yeah. You know, let the show directors do the job. Let me do my job. You know, don't micromanage me. I won't micromanage you. Let the show directors go forward and do what they do.
Yeah. Well, my good friend Jay Nielsen, says to me on Sunday morning, says, you don't need to worry about me, man. I know what I'm getting myself into here. He said, if you were in my shoes right now, would you be feeling feelings towards me like that? I'm like, no, God, no. He goes, well, that's the same coming back at you. It's like, we know we're signing up for a studio show event and what that all entails, and we want it to be part of it. So just, relax. It's going to be okay. And there's a lot of other things we're getting out of this. So that really let me just kind of be like, chill out a bit and not be on top of everything.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, yeah, think about it. It's like, hey, you want to come up and come set up a show in my yard? I'm like, typically no. But after the year that we've just gone through, I'll give it a go. They all knew what they were getting into. That doesn't surprise me. It's nice he said that.
And then Kimber, she was telling me how this year of COVID really made her realize that we get on these crazy schedules and we feel like we have connections with other artist friends because we see them at shows and we hang out with them at shows and we talk to them. But when we're back in our own places, it feels really alone because they're all over the country. You know what I'm saying? And this wasn't an opportunity for us to, well, for one, she made it a goal and we've made it a goal to connect with people. That is important now. Having a social life and having friends and having outlet other than our art business is vital. And we're going to be sure that when we get back into this crazy schedule, that we make room for it.
That's nice. I like hearing that. I like the fact that with social media, it used to be a way that I could keep track of my friends from coast to coast. I don't want to talk politics, and it doesn't matter which side of the coin you're on. It was a nightmare for everybody, and it became so divisive that it was like, let me post about this piece of news, and it just seemed like everything was on fire. And that wasn't why I liked social media. I liked keeping tabs on my friends and made me feel like I wasn't alone when I'd have like a 2-month stretch for shows. And a couple of people have reached out and said that is what this podcast has done for them. And I find that really flattering. So those are really kind words. And I thank you. Because we're doing this a little bit in a vacuum, and it's really great to hear some positive feedback.
It's so true. And I will say that the start of this whole project kind of happened back in February. And it started with a phone call from Diane French calling me up saying, hey, I'm on the NAIA board and I would love you to consider joining. And I humored her. I let her go on with her story and why I should do it. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I'm too busy. I had that pat answer ready. Nope, can't do it. I'm too busy. And the longer she went on to talk about it, I wasn't necessarily taking in what she was saying. I was having my inner dialogue going. And in my head, I said, what do you mean you're too busy? You're sitting around, you're bored off your butt, you're blowing glass, but you're like feel disconnected. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what this is going to turn into. And that's when I'm like, you know what? You just got to jump in and just see where it goes. So join the board. And then from the board kind of came the idea, and then it became our thing. And really, it's a lesson in jumping into something new and just letting it evolve and see where it goes and find inspiration. And it's it's kind of grown for me into something that was kind of like when I first started glass blowing. I was just blowing glass because it was fun. I didn't know where it was going to go. And then it actually turned into my career. And then things became super predictable. And you got to make these pieces and that pieces and go to these shows and do it this way and that way. And this is kind of like, for me, what it was like back then. And what I've connected to is that inspiration that I was lacking in. And I'm so grateful to know that this inspiration is spreading amongst our friends and our peers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that we are getting back to work, and I love the fact that we get to drop these shows on Mondays when most people drive.
Yeah.
I think that was I don't know if that was a intention on your part, but kind of a stroke of genius.
I'll take that pat on the back from you there.
Do it. As opposed to just Monday being the start of the week. It was like, yeah, this is on purpose, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, nice work.
So, this was a really, really great talk, but, we have a wonderful interview coming up here. I had a great talk with Kina Crow.
Yeah, you had a really nice talk with Kina Crow. I loved the humor that she brings to it. She's always so fun to be next to at shows or to just have at a dinner table. She's just a ball of positive energy, and she's good stuff. I love Kina.
Well, I saw her work years and years and years ago. And I come from a family of self-help folks who love to sit around and talk psychobabble and analyze everyone's thoughts and feelings. And I saw her pieces years ago of the psychiatrist looking in the brain and all of the little pieces jumping out of the head. I'm like, oh my God, this is so funny. It's so theatrical, which also ties into my background. And it's all about this like analyzing stuff. And I'm like, oh man, I love the work. And so I've always kind of had her work on my radar. And like a lot of us, we know each other's work, but we couldn't pick each other out of a lineup if we had to. So then I saw the Seesaw Project getting ready to talk to Chris Dahlquist, and she was part of that. And when she was talking on there, the very first episode with Chris and Beth Bajarski, it was like one of my theater friends back in college 30 years ago. I'm like, she's my people, and I have got to sit down and talk to her. I got to pick her brain, and we had such a fun time talking.
Yeah, it comes through the interview. I'm looking forward to people hearing that. Coming from an Episcopalian don't talk about your feelings family, it got pretty raw. I don't know how I became so open with people with my background, but it was really a cool conversation to hear, diving into things like mental health and starting to hear a theme, like how many of us have a theater background?
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
That's right. Well, there's got to be like a performance quality to us doing what we do and standing in front of people and doing the look at me thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, let's get right into Kina Crow.
All right, here she is. Our guest today on the Independent Artist Podcast is Kina Crow. Kina is a sculptor, a mixed media artist, and an F-bomber. Her work celebrates the journey of being human while being brave and staying young. The sense of humor in her work allows us to look at the things that make us feel insecure and laugh. That is how I connect to her work and why I was compelled to invite her here to join me today. Hey, Kina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So glad you could join us today.
Yeah, me too. We have the same glasses, too. We are twinsies.
Twinsies, girl. So we're recording this here. It's about a week after Winter Park, but it will air later on in the summer. So asking about some things like Winter Park and all that kind of stuff might end up seeming like, we'll all be back to shows by then. It will be like, going back to shows, like that's old hat. But was Winter Park your first show back on the road?
Yeah, it was. It was the first show in 14 months.
Wow.
So we were really excited. My son travels with me.
Okay.
He works as my studio manager here,
Right.
and then he drives for me so that I can fly. And we were all fully vaccinated, so it was pretty awesome.
I don't know about you, but thinking about doing Winter Park back in April even, or even March, it kind of seemed like a little bit scarier to think about it. But then once those vaccinations started, it was like, wait a minute, this is like actually can happen.
Right. Yeah. No, it was awesome. We had actually, so John and Lynn Whipple, they have this little Shangri-La that they live in Winter Park. And we had texted them a couple of weeks before going, hey, if we bring some meat, can we cook it at your house? Like, if we bring the meat, will you host the party? So we did that. And that was just so awesome. So I kind of felt like even if the show wasn't good, I was going to get to see friends and hang out there. And it turned out that the show was good.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's so sorely needed that we could just be in person with our friends again, isn't it?
Totally. Absolutely. And the funny thing is that I was set up right next to two of my best buds, Amy Carstensen and Daphne Covington. They're painters.
Nice. Oh.
And so 3 days we got to hang out, and it was like a really good soothing balm to go and do that. And now my inventory is super, super low. So I'm jamming for Chicago Old Town. Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't have to fight the urge to like get back in your booth and actually talk to people. You weren't over talking to your friends the whole weekend.
No, my friends we were like corner neighbors.
Okay.
So our chairs were next to each other.
Oh, man, I love that.
If we didn't have people, although like they, I think, had a really great show too. People were out and they were interested and they were wanting to acquire art. So that was pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
And then the little lulls, we got to hang out and drink wine. And
Nice. So you won an award. Which piece did they choose?
I did. It's a piece, I don't think I have it on my website, that I had started last year during the pandemic and was using it. I did a video during Seesaw of works in progress, and I couldn't make this piece work. And then I had an idea at the last minute, like 2 days before we went to Winter Park. So it's like 4 feet by 4 feet. It's a big head that's covered in flowers with a little butterfly, a little flying person. So,
well, congrats. That's exciting.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, talk to me a little bit about your childhood.
The traumatic parts.
There you go. Sorry, I just dropped a big one. So let me start that one over again, shall we?
Well, Mr. Freud, what would you like to know?
We're going to dig right into this one. No, I guess what I mean is you have a non-traditional type childhood, with your father being in the movie business and whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of your life?
Yeah, so my dad originally was like a repertory theater actor. He had a company that he traveled with that toured the U.S. And when I was really, really little, essentially like left my mom at home to take care of the kids while he, traveled around the country doing theater for a lot of churches and a lot of children's theater. Okay. And then we were living in Mar Vista, California, which is essentially Culver City, so Los Angeles. And they would rehearse at this old hotel called the Monica Hotel. It's on Pacific Coast Highway. I don't actually even know if the building's still existing, but we used to kind of be free to wander. And my favorite parts were like digging in the costume trunks. I don't know why, but I always loved not putting them on, but playing with them. So that's like my first memory of like doing costumes. But I remember being like 3 years old and he was always broke. And there was a little bar attached to the hotel. And if he took me in there and put me on the bar and would make me dance, then people would buy him drinks. So that was the way he could drink for free. So, I mean, like, that's kind of my first memories of like how ridiculous and crazy that life was. But
wow. And he actually pulled you onto the screen too, didn't he? Have you in some of his films?
He wanted me to be an actress. Like, right? It's a weird thing. When your kids are born, you're like, I'm going to determine what My birth announcements were like little programs for a play. And my name was Verkina Flower, which he thought was a great stage name. It's cool. I like it, but it's kind of ridiculous.
Well, I get that. I come from a family. My eldest stepsister's name is Bambi Lynn. So I can it falls along the same kind of line. I hear you there.
So yeah, he also worked in the production side, when he couldn't get an acting job because, rent is real.
Yeah, right.
So very typically on a lot of films, he would have a role in production and then they'd give him a part. And then if there was a part for a kid, I think the first thing I did, I was 10 years old. I've actually never seen the film and it's bizarre and apparently like kind of creepy.
Like a horror flick kind of thing, you're saying?
Did a lot of horror movies. That was like the B horror films, which are now like cult films. So that's interesting. But you know what? I was always too fat. Like if I had to go on an audition, I rarely got roles because they're like, oh, well, she's pretty, but she needs to lose 20 pounds. And those fuckers, man, because I weighed like 120 pounds.
Right.
But they want you to weigh 95. And that totally does screw with your head because like if I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, I was amazing, Right.
When I was a theater major and I graduated with an acting degree. And I got to the end game of my schooling where they start doing more career counseling and stuff. And they used to say, the professor would say to me, I just want to prepare you, but you are going to have to grow into your type. And at first I didn't know what that meant. And it basically meant I didn't have the physicality for the leading man. I was going to be the character old guy. But when you're
the comic relief, right?
The comic, right. So I'm kind of the chubby 20-year-old. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm not going to get hired until I'm like 50, which actually that's how it worked out. So
You're not 50.
Yeah, I am.
Oh my God, you look like you're 35. Did you hit the enhance button on the Zoom? Enhance my appearance button.
Well, COVID has taken me from 30 to 50, so I'm sure certainly have aged a lot this year. So anyway, so then you got into costumes after that, is that right?
Yeah, because well, first of all, I was the laundress for my house. That was my household. And
Cinderella.
I had to perfectly iron all my dad's clothing, hem, everything. And then if he had an audition, I would have to put everything together for him. My dad was in his 30s, but he had dentures. So he would take his teeth out and we would whiten his beard and he started playing old man because he was so much more nimble. He could do things that an older person couldn't do. So in the mid 70s, he kind of started to have some success playing like old men. And he quite often played like bums and winos. I did all the wardrobe for my junior high play. My grandmother had taught me to sew, and I always loved textiles and fabrics and making things. And I always would rather design the costume and make it rather than wear it.
Okay.
Not that I don't enjoy a tiara now and then, or a tutu, because I totally do. But so he had friends that would give me jobs. And I was young when I started. I don't think I was quite 18 when I first started working in wardrobe departments.
Okay. And so those were professional type jobs in the industry as a youngster like that. Wow.
Yeah, I got paid. And I mean, for a couple of years, I did wardrobe on porno movies. And people always would say, what wardrobe?
Are there wardrobes in that?
Absolutely. They always take off their clothes. But
I got to start from somewhere.
Like if there was a maid, I would always have like the cutest, sexiest little velvet French maid costume. And I actually had a ball with that. And this is like 1980, 1981. And they were paying me like $300 a day. I mean, I think that's what I make now. So I'm like, I thought, it was awesome.
Nice.
But that was its own like bizarre experience. And then I went from there to doing TV commercials and slasher movies, horror films. I did a film down in Texas, and the director of photography was a guy that had shot Dog Day Afternoon. He's a big, well-known cinematographer. And he was like, oh, my daughter's a costumer. She was a little bit older than me. She's a costume designer. And he introduced us, and we ended up working together for like 13 years.
Oh.
She got a job on a kids' TV show for Nickelodeon called All That. And we worked on that and several other Nickelodeon projects for many years. And that was really fun because it was wild and crazy and it was kind of over the top. One time we had to make a giant walking carrot.
Okay.
Superheroes. And I think that even now what I'm doing, I look back and I see a lot of those comical costumes in my pieces, for sure.
I see. Totally. Yeah, real, like, they're characters. I mean, they've got the human backstory, but the presentation is comical and childlike and fun. You know, it has those qualities to it.
You know, I read something recently, I think it was on a gallery website, where they were talking about people my age or who grew up in the 60s and the 70s. Like, a lot of artists' work kind of replicates that experience and the toys and the things that we used to play with. And I see a lot of that. Like, now that,
nice.
that I read that, I'm starting to pay attention to that a little bit more. And I think it's true. But, you know, I love it because I can make these people will see them and they'll like, oh, that's so cute. And then they'll go up and read them and it'll have the word bitch in the title. I mean, it's awesome because I'm kind of a chicken shit. I'm like a scared person, but my little people can say anything they want to.
They're bold and brave.
And they make me braver.
Yeah. So when you were working in the costumes, was it like pulling costumes, or were you actually in design too? Did you create designs and that sort of thing?
All of it. And honestly, there's nothing more fun than shopping with other people's money. So if it's something contemporary, you know, you're going to the mall. Mm-hmm. And if it's period, you're in costume houses, and Western costume was like the best. When I started working, it was still on Melrose, right next to Paramount Studios, this old building where the switchboard was still that old-fashioned one where the girl wore a headset and plugged in the wires to the switchboard. Yeah. And that place was so amazing. You'd look at something and then you'd see like Vivian Lee written, you know, or the character's name and the actor's name stitched into the costume. And then So it was their actual wardrobe from back in the day? Yes, from a film. So it was pretty amazing. And if there was something that needed to be made, you know, you get to go shop for the fabric and figure out how to engineer it a lot of times, and then go work with a tailor. All kinds of stuff. Well, how did you shift out of that and start working with fine art? I'd always made stuff. I used to make like little paper mache faces just for myself to hang on the wall and for fun. And I had been working with a guy who directed television commercials. And I went to him and his wife's house, and I saw these paintings from a folk artist. Her name is Nancy Thomas. I don't know if she's still working now. They were folk art-ish, but they were wild. And I was like, I can do that. I loved them. And I liked original art, but I couldn't afford it. So in my spare time, when my kids were little, I would totally ignore them, start making stuff and painting stuff and putting it on my walls. And you started with painting? I did. And then I made these giant paper mache faces. Somebody was asking me about this the other day, and I had totally forgotten. While I was still doing wardrobe in between, like sometimes you'd go 4 months without a job. So a girl that I was working with in costumes, she and I formed our own hat company. So we had a hat company. And when we stopped kind of selling to stores, I started making them and taking them to like little festivals around Los Angeles. So this is in the late 80s. And they did really, really well. So that's kind of how I got into, like, I knew the tent. So like the marketplace kind of thing. A little bit, yeah. Okay.
When did you start making that shift, like into this world that we all know you in around here, on the road, doing art shows?
So I started kind of experimenting with clay maybe around 2002, 2003.
Okay.
I had done these paper mache faces that a couple had purchased. My very, very, very first art show, they were geometric shapes, and they were going to redo their pool. And they were like, hey, can you make us tile? And I was like, no, I don't know anything about that. And I went to my local arts center, and they showed me how to do that, although it wasn't terribly successful. But from then on, I knew that I could, and I kind of kept taking classes there, got some information from another clay artist, that I had met at a show, and just kind of started doing it. And I was making these really, really large busts. It's funny. So in the ceramic world, at least back then, it was like, well, if you want to get in a gallery, if you want to be taken seriously, you have to have a degree. And I was like, well, that's probably not happening. I was like 40. I was almost 40 at the time. And so I was entering competitions so that I could get a resume together. And there was a competition where the piece had to be really little, like 2 to 3 inches high. And I spent all day carving this little porcelain bust. And I was like, oh, I want to put that in a painting. And my husband figured out how to make the little niche where I put the little people. And I was like, I love this. And I would put really cool titles on them. I took them to a couple of shows, and they did really well. And people would buy them and say, oh, but can I have the thing that has the title on it? So my husband said, oh my gosh, you should try to figure out a way to put the titles on. And I wanted it to go with the piece. I wanted it to work with it. So I took a workshop on how to transfer text or images, any kind of images, onto ceramic. And so that's how...
That was the next step for that.
And it's just kept evolving. Like they first started out as busts, and then they kind of grew legs, and now I can kind of make them do anything.
Right. Yeah. What I'm getting from what I've seen of you and now what I'm hearing from you is really your career path has been kind of a in the moment kind of stream of consciousness kind of thing. Like you find the inspiration in the moment of what really excites you. And then opportunities kind of come to you, or avenues come to you, and it's just real. It's not like there's a concrete, definite, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to do it. It is all an evolution from an internal place.
It is. It's fucking magic.
You build it and they come.
Not just that. I mean, I think that so a lot of the concepts for the pieces or the titles come from my struggle to get over my insecurities, and which honestly age totally helps with that,
Yeah,
but
right.
And learning to like get over myself and that shit. I get these epiphanies that I'm like, oh, I'm totally ridiculous. And the more I can make fun of myself, the better the pieces are. Then I come up with these great ideas,
Well, would you say that your work is self-referential?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm doing a lot of custom work now where people will say, oh, this is me and this is my life. And I'm able to, after all the years, because I do love other people and their stories. I love stories. So I'll take people's stories and then try to write something specific for them. And that's actually harder. That's much harder.
Yeah, well, to me, it comes from a very theatrical place, as a trained actor in method acting, I spent so much time building a backstory for every character for that 1 minute on stage. You figured out where they went to school and their storyline and what they had for breakfast, what happened the minute they walked in the door. You put all this into it just to walk on and have your line and walk off again. So your pieces have this rich backstory. And hearing you talk about it on Seesaw, literally, you have a whole fleshed out life for these characters that you've created in your work.
I think I've known them all along, but it's so funny that you talk about method acting because I totally studied for a few months at the Actors Studio. Okay. So I totally know what you're talking about. Like you said, they are self-referential. But so I already know them. You know, I do have a ridiculous imagination.
Yeah.
Which is why I can't find my keys, because I can never find my keys because I'm always thinking about something else, you know?
Oh, right. I will say, kind of looking over your body of work over the years, almost like you can dissect where Kina's at this moment in time. Like for pieces that are really about what's going on in your head, the thoughts going on in your brain. You had little people escaping the brain. You have psychiatrists looking into the brain. And so that was probably a real like self-conscious period. But your current body of work seems to be about like acceptance of that and celebrating of that, and looking for inspiration and joy.
It is, absolutely. You're so observant.
Well, I'm telling you, your work really speaks to me.
Oh my goodness!
Honestly.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad. But you know what I think is it's like I go back to that like weird like little 3-year-old dancing on the table in order for my father to drink, and I always thought that. I'm not religious, but I always have a joke that God made me fat so I wouldn't be a table dancer, because I can't think of anything better than like dancing naked on a table, except I'm way too chubby to do that. But I feel like,
just reckless abandon, reckless abandon of just letting yourself go.
So I think I'm trying to do that within my pieces, but for sure, this is it's my little journey, but it's not just my journey. I really, you know, and this is the most awesome thing about doing art festivals rather than selling your work at a gallery. You meeting people who are looking at your work and who are identifying with it. And it makes me feel like, oh, I'm not such a crazy bitch. There's like so many other people out there who feel the same way that I do. So that it makes me feel good. It makes them feel good. It's like, you know, to have those, especially like those weird little naughty, strange parts of you, like recognized and go, oh yeah, I'm batshit too, and it's okay.
Yeah, you make the invitation for people to walk in your booth or connect with your work, and to see you were brave to say, you know, this is part of me that's kind of insecure. And they would be like, I can be brave too, and I can let you know that I connect with you on that level, and that's really cool. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And I try to do so. I try to have the funny stuff because I love hearing people laugh. And then I'm like, I love to have the really sort of deep, more introspective, poignant stuff, because I also love it when somebody comes up and they're totally crying.
And this happened to me and that happened to me. You know?
I love it. I get one crier every show and it's like, yes.
Oh, well, it's got to be like such a rewarding feeling when someone walks in and just has a full-on belly laugh like that. Like you've evoked that response.
It's awesome, yeah.
One question I was thinking about when I look at your work is the shift between having pieces that sit on a pedestal to, it seems like your work is heavily wall art now with sculptural components added to the wall art. Is that true? Or are you kind of making that shift?
I mean, it is. It's, you got to really love artwork to buy sculpture, but everybody has walls, and truthfully, they sell better. The pedestal pieces are way more difficult to make, way more time consuming to make.
That was like a nuts and bolts practical decision to work in that way.
I mean, it is, but every once in a while I have a great idea for a piece and I really, really want to make it. And, I don't know, they might bury me with it. I might carry it around for the rest of my life. But some shows, you can only get a double booth if you have 2 categories. So even if I might carry a big sculpture around for a really, really long time, it allows me to if I get in both, it allows me to have a double booth, but also it'll bring people in, even if it's to look at the wall work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I do like making them. They're just like, some of those pieces are like giving birth to another child, and I don't want. So
Yeah.
I'm making them, but I'm charging way, 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 way more for them because they like exhaust me.
Well, the piece that comes to mind when you're talking about that is the funny little things that cross my mind. I love that piece.
Thank you. I do too, but it's going to take just the right collector to put that in their home or office or space. But I think it's hysterical. I love. I did a time lapse of making the head, which is really fun.
I saw that. I loved it. Yes, and if anyone wants to see that, we've talked a little bit about your show that you produced with Beth Bajarski and Chris Dahlquist called the Seesaw Project. You can go onto YouTube and check it out. But yeah, you have a lot of in-process pieces that you talk about your work. But anyway, back to what you were saying.
Well, originally, I've had that idea for many years, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. And originally, they were going to be clowns. And I love clowns, but when I make clowns, people go, "Oh, that's scary." They think, and I was like, "What else is funny and fabulous?" And
like they're the character out of It or something. They're going to turn sinister.
And I was like, "Oh my God, drag queens! What? I mean, and I got to make those fabulous costumes for them. Like one of them has like this real 60s looking dress with chain on it. Like, I don't know, they were really fun.
They get to be fabulous and and just be and celebrate, just to be like proud and happy and right there. So the decision to make them drag queens, why did you decide that?
You know what? I don't know that I recall, except that like, I wanted to think of something that was funny. I needed them to be people, and I thought that they would be funnier than clowns, and nobody would be afraid of them. You know.
And I know when ideas happen, sometimes something clicks, and it doesn't need a reason or an explanation. It just is like, yep, that's what it is, and we're moving forward, and we're not going to evaluate it.
I have not had a show yet that I've been able to like show that in person, because I've only had one show so
that
far.
Didn't go to Winter Park?
No, because I was only in mixed media. I didn't. Yeah.
Oh.
I think the first show that I'm doing Art in the Pearl, and I'm in sculpture there, so I'll be able to show it there.
I'll see you there. Maybe we'll be neighbors.
Oh, really? Oh, God, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So one other thing I just wanted to say about that piece is what I love about how you have them positioned on top of the ginormous head is they're standing almost like it was reminiscent of like an audition in theater, how they kind of are standing up for their, you know what I mean? And the director is auditioning them. And it took me back to this time in college where we had this exercise where the professor said, okay, what we need for you to do is to turn on and off your stage presence. And some people could actually do that. You know, they could stand in front of you and they could just have this glow that you couldn't take your eyes off of. But then when you had to shut it off, some of them couldn't do that, but some of them could. And you're just like a regular Joe Schmo. So it kind of reminded me of that exercise. They were just emoting and they were like, look at me. And it's super cool.
Thank you so much. Yeah. You had said, earlier, you can tell where I'm at by like what pieces I'm making. So could you tell that I was drinking a lot last year?
Oh no!
They all have drink names. It's
I did notice. Yeah,
those little people all have drink names, and I did.
Chardonnay and Hot Toddy
and Margarita. Yeah,
Margarita was the other one. Awesome. Well, all right. Well, we all do that. We get into different stages and we move on.
Oh, so COVID, just like, I was scary. It was scary last year.
It was scary. Yeah, I mean, we got it from all angles. We had the fear of our own health, the fear of our family's health, but then the whole economic thing and the future of our industry was like,
right,
life is over as we know it.
Yeah, it scared the crap out of me.
Did it?
Yeah.
Well, I can share myself that I have a trauma history. And when traumatic moments like that come up, it is hard to, fight the triggers. You kind of have to do the work. I found myself getting into the whole adrenaline junkie kind of thing where I worked harder and faster than I do on this already crazy schedule we keep when we have shows. And it was me trying to keep control over the world that was falling apart. So, I mean, I hear what you said about that's how you reacted to COVID. And that was mine. And neither one is good. Each one causes us pain, but we get through it. And the good thing is that we can look at it and see what's happening. And it's not like we're unaware of what's happening to us.
Well, that's one of the great things that was great about Seesaw Project, because it gave us we got to see each other because we had these meetings every single, I think we had them every week. It was an insane amount of work. Yeah. But I feel like we all got closer, and then it gave us something to work towards, to look forward to. And I'm bummed because I contacted you, and I contacted so many artists, but it almost seems like now in retrospect, anybody I had contacted through a website, right, as opposed to Instagram or something like that, I never heard back from. But people were busy last year. So I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're all guilty of the email that comes in that says, I have a great opportunity for you. And we just kind of filter it out and think, yeah, I'll get to that when I have time. And then we kind of let it slip. And for me, I don't remember it, and I wish I would have, because I would have loved to have participated with you guys, and I would have had a blast with it. And I don't know if I didn't catch your guys' names, or for whatever reason it didn't register. And I feel bad about it because...
No, don't. I mean, there's a lot of people that said, oh yeah, I want to do it, but I'm really, really busy right now. And so I get that all the time too. Like, oh, I sent you an email. I'm like, I never saw that. So anyway, I was thinking about you.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. Well, I remember when we first talked about, getting together to do this interview, you said that you had a similar experience. You walked into a collector to drop off a piece and you saw our work, and that's how you had thought to call us up about Seesaw.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. So I love that we all get to kind of see our friends' artwork in collectors' homes and how they live together.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, one of the things I love about when your artist statement or your mission statement that you talk about your work is really about the journey of being human, contemplating your place in reality, and being brave and staying youthful. And I don't know, it's so great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just weird, right? It's such, I just can't think of anything weirder than being a human being. And we all get, we live these lives and we have physical needs. And then there's this weird social stuff that comes in, and rules that people made up, and you're supposed to follow them. I just think it is the strangest thing ever. But we get caught up in our stories and we forget we're just here and it's just now. This is the only thing that there is. For me, I mean, I noticed specifically because I had a severe problem with depression when I was a teenager, and I'm self-taught. Self-taught, self-help girl in so many respects.
Are you saying that there's an insecurity of you question your quality or your abilities? Is that what it is? Or your path?
Oh, all of that. I'm just saying over time, paying attention to being human and all of the facets, and stepping back and trying to discern if what somebody has told me is real and true is not just a societal norm or a fabrication. For sure, trying to expel those insecurities.
Well, I think a lot of us choose this life that we're all in at these shows and being an artist, a professional artist, because we don't subscribe to the societal norms and rules, and we want to operate outside of that and create our own kind of structure.
I can't imagine. I mean, it was awesome doing wardrobe for all those years. I traveled, I met amazing people. It was a super fun job, especially if you're young, because it is very hard and the hours are brutal, even though I also work too many hours. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie too. But I can't imagine going back and working for somebody else now.
No,
ever.
right.
Ever. And
yeah, for some boss to say, Kina, this is what you pulled for this and doesn't work, and be like, it totally works. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no.
It's like you have to be the boss of your own creations.
But I do think that because I have help in my studio. My son works as my studio manager. He does like all the shipping. He does email correspondence,
That's
anything
cool.
that has to do with the website, ordering stuff. You know, I mean, it's just so much stuff so that I can make it. And then I have help in the studio for all of the prep and all of the packaging and all of the cleaning and organization. But to run a crew, like I think that working in film and having to run a crew of people like that helped me, you know, like I don't know. I'm like, I don't think I'd be where I am right now had I not taken that road.
Yeah, so many things that we experience in the past circle around, and even though we're not doing that, it's still almost like it's in the here and now of what we're doing right now. And it, you know what I'm saying? It's such a vital part of how we do things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about the illustrated book that you did.
So several years ago, I had a piece that I used to make, and I recreate my pieces, but they're all individually made, so they're never identical, even down to the little sculptures. But I had a piece that I did, several renditions of called I Wonder, because I wonder, like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And so I put a whole book together. And it's, I wonder why clouds get to be thick and fluffy, but it's not okay for me, right? Like it's okay for clouds. And it's just this whole thing about being human and sort of little abstract ideas. Like, I wonder if today will miss me when I'm gone. So that was the balloon piece.
Yes.
It's a little girl, floating away from today. And it took me like 5 years total. So I made all these little sets and I made all these little people, and I created them, and I photographed them. So I had to learn, because I didn't know jack about photography. Although now my photography is so much better. It's still not amazing, but these pictures turned out pretty good. But I did have help. My husband also works in film, and so we had some professional people come to help me learn to light things. And I had it written out and all sketched out. And then it was weeks and weeks and weeks of building these things. I have a piece with a little girl on the top of a coconut cake, and it's snowing, and she's like eating the snowflakes. Well, I know from doing TV commercials that you can't have a real cake. It's not going to look good. So that was like made out of styrofoam so that I could make it perfect. So it was actually, because it took so long, it was actually quite expensive. And there's a lot of stuff it was a learning curve, but I'm really, really glad that I did it. I'm really glad that I did it. Chris Dahlquist is the one that had encouraged me to do a Kickstarter, so that I could raise enough money to have the damn thing printed. And we printed 500 copies. And that piece with the balloon is the very last figure. Because what I did for my Kickstarter was I took all of the pieces and I made them into wall boxes. So that was part of, you could buy these different, I don't know if you know anything about Kickstarter, but you could buy the different packages. So you could buy that original piece, and you get a t-shirt. We did t-shirts, and you get a book or you get 3 books or whatever it was.
Right. The different level of investment gives you different
and
things.
So many people came to my rescue and adopted these pieces, and it was really, really awesome. And so that balloon piece, it's the last figure I have, but I also don't have any more books. I saved one book for that. So, Chris was encouraging me, you should do another reprint last year, but I didn't have any money last year. I couldn't afford to pay attention. We were busy, but it was different,
I think it's a super creative and interesting way to take a series of work and then also kind of brand it by making it into the book, the illustrated book. And it's like, they all become part of this big project. It's really inspirational that you came up with that whole idea.
Thank you. I wanted to impress myself.
Yeah.
I was like, I made a book. And you know what? It's really hard. But I'm glad I did it. It was really hard. And I had said to too many people, I'm doing a book. So I couldn't not do it.
Right. You put it out there, and then next time someone sees you, hey, how's that book going? And you're like, good.
Yeah, it took me longer than I thought it would.
You've committed to it. Yeah. So, well, I love that you get inspired by a project and you move forward with it, and it doesn't fit let's say the predetermined kind of path that somebody's supposed to do or whatever. It's constant innovation for you. It's constant trying new series, or what's motivating you now to try this or try that. And it is a real inner directed kind of thing.
Yeah. It's funny because I don't know, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I had decided what I really wanted was to open my own gallery in New Orleans. I freaking love New Orleans. I just love it so much. It's it's my favorite place in the whole world, especially that little French Quarter. So I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I started saving money and paying off my debt. And we had even gone down in January of 2020 and met with Kathy Rose. I don't know. She's an artist that has her own gallery down there, whose work I absolutely adore. She used to be a festival artist, but now she has her own gallery. And I met with another person who was going to set me up with an attorney just so I could get all the paperwork done. And she's like, I'll keep my eye out for a space. And I was like, I was going to bet the farm on doing that. And then COVID hit, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, if that had happened, do you know what I mean? If I had just opened, and it didn't occur to me that anything like that could ever even happen, right? So I was like, oh gosh. So now I'm working on something else. Now I was like, well, I'll just go vacation in New Orleans every time.
So you've moved on from that plan.
I think that it would have destroyed me financially. So I'm really, really glad that
you weren't committed to it.
Yeah. Even though I still want to do it, but I don't know.
Well, we do kind of approach that topic of how much longer is festival life going to be the primary means of supporting ourselves, and the age group that we're in. Doing these shows is rough, and you are fortunate that you have your son to do the heavy kind of legwork for you, drive there, set it up, and you can show up and then sell.
Yeah.
For all of us, COVID knocked out that opportunity to make revenue for a year. And we've got weather events, and really just putting all of our eggs in this basket is not wise. So is there other opportunities for you, other table legs that you're looking at putting under your table to keep you going?
So I don't work with galleries because I can't make my work fast enough, and I cannot afford a split. I cannot afford it. I cannot afford to pack it, ship it, and then take 50%. I just can't afford it. But I wouldn't, I would love to be in some galleries. So I'm actually working on trying to get some bronzes done and I've been told that because I have such a control issue that I don't want just stuff made and then like reproduced. But apparently there is a way to paint because it's the little painting and the details that give like the nuance.
Yeah.
So if I can still hand paint them, you still have to fire. It's a different process. You have to fire it in a kiln, which is fine for me. But I'm also getting arthritis in my hands. So I'm like realizing that that's going to be a thing, especially for sculpting the little people. I have to wear a second set of glasses over my own glasses to be able to see. It's very tiny. I've also wanted to open a venue here in Pittsburgh for years that could be like a gallery / studio / like event place. Like you could rent it for a party. How fun would that be?
That would be amazing. Yeah.
My husband, so he works on movies here and they'll have wrap parties, these big, huge wrap parties. But most of the time, the venue's kind of like, wah, wah, it's not very exciting. And I thought, it'd be so cool if you could have a party where there was like art and things that were fascinating and fun. So that's maybe something that I'd like to. I've been wanting to do that for years and years. So I'm hoping that that's something that will eventually come to pass. But
I think that sounds awesome. That sounds like
it's
so
a whole
much
other
fun.
animal for sure. So.
Right. I mean, the infrastructure of running an event place, it wouldn't just be the designing of it, but I mean, you can build it and have staff, and then you can focus on your work and have the place be like young people.
Young people. I think that last year taught me that I don't have to do shows or I don't have to do as many, but I need to do shows that I haven't done before and increase my mailing list and be more aggressive with my email list because
that's what I'm learning too.
Yeah. And so I told my son, I was like, we're going to do more shows next year. And he was like, ugh, I said, you make more money, but he doesn't really care about making money. He wants the best, easiest possible life he can get. Okay. And I need to retire in 12 years. Plus I want to do some bronzes and I want to, have my venue. So I need to make some money. Plus I need so much Botox,
Well, you have Max. I have Oliver. Oliver is our sound guy. He's my son. He's 20, and he wants to go. He's a musician. He's going into.
I love that name.
I know. Anyway, so he works on all of the sound mastering. I edit. I cut the content. I don't want to trust anybody with the editing.
I totally get you. So how many kids do you have?
I have 2 kids. My daughter is grad student going to school for trauma therapy. She's 23 and my son is 20.
Oh, good. Maybe I'll look her up when she's done with school. But this is my trauma therapy, though,
for sure.
Right?
You know what's so weird is, have you ever heard of something called EMDR?
Yes, it's the like the feedback.
Yeah, it's where you like wear the headphones and the sounds and the therapist talks you through stuff and you move your eyes left to right and it's like reprocessing trauma in the brain. And it's really geared towards theater people. And when I started doing it, I'm like, this is all fake. This is like some hippy dippy thing where I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to commit to this experience and it's just going to be dumb. Well, I'm like, okay, I can immerse myself and trust, and I did it. And it actually worked. Somebody could do something that would normally give me a trigger, and I didn't turn into a raving lunatic. I could actually just sit there and go, okay, well, let's talk about this. I'm like, whoa, what happened to me?
Well, there was, because I live in Pittsburgh, we have UPMC, which is also a teaching school. And I had a severe panic attack on the way from Portland to St. Louis when a cop pulled me over for speeding. And in my brain, I'm going, it's fine. It's just.
Right. It's not out your brain. Yeah.
But I couldn't talk because my back was squeezing me and I was talking to the guy, and I was explaining what was going on. I was like, oh my God, it must seem like I'm on drugs. And I tell him my story. He goes, what's your medium? And I was like,
I can't remember what I do.
And I gave him my card and he goes back and I can hear them calling my name out over the speaker because he's checking on me and everything. And he comes back and he's got paper, a paper in his hand. He's like, yeah, I was a ceramics major and got in a fight with my professor my last semester. And now I do this. And he goes, this is a warning. Please be careful. But the fact that I had this panic attack and I started to have more and more of them, especially in traffic, which is why I really like that my son drives for me now.
There you go.
My doctor was like, sign me up for some program at EMDR. She's like, oh, there's a study. We're doing this. You could get in on it. And the grad student calls me up and gives me like this quiz. And she's like, oh, you're not going to qualify for this because you're probably actually bipolar. I was like, what fucking idiot diagnoses somebody as bipolar over the telephone?
And on a survey, for fuck's sake.
It was like the same kind of quiz you would have taken in Cosmo magazine or something.
There you go.
But you know what? It makes me go, oh, maybe I should check that out. Because I do that EFT, which sounds so hippy dippy too. But it works, where you the tapping thing. And
yeah, they did that. I didn't do it, but they did that with my kids, the tapping. Yeah. And so we actually joke about it. If we're having a stressful moment, we will say, doing the tapping on like the side of the knees or the wrists or whatever. That's what you're talking about, right?
Well, yes, but how it's been, because I thought this is fucking bullshit how they do this. And I was like, and that you're supposed to say something. I'm like, I feel like a total idiot that I'm doing this. But how it was explained to me where I got it is like, it's a pattern interrupter. So when you start, it's a pattern. And so that made more sense to me. Like, oh, yeah. But yeah,
what I know about EMDR, and speaking from experience, is trauma isn't stored in the brain. It's stored in the physical body, the lymph system. And this EMDR helps it process it. It turns a traumatic experience or pattern of traumatic experiences into memories that are no longer triggering events.
What if you don't remember stuff?
Well, I bet you might be opening Pandora's box. You better just keep making artwork, that's all.
Fuck it, I'll do that. At least it pays the bills.
There you go. I read about you, or I watched on Seesaw, that you are a fan of true crime. Is that right?
I don't know what's up with that. I don't know why I'm in love with it. I mean, it's another like bizarre little corner. And maybe I've started to think, because a lot of my little pieces, like the little girl will have a bloody knife, and they're cute little girls with bloody knives. And I think it's a throwback from in the 60s and the 70s, not to get all like feminist, but there was a suppression for sure, that even though you were nodding and going, okay, and just going ahead and doing what you were told or expected to do, in the back of your mind, you were like, I will cut you. So maybe that's some of it, but I'm totally fascinated with it. And my husband and son both worked on Mindhunter, which was a series on, I think, Netflix. And I don't think that the title wouldn't have made me interested in watching it, but because they worked on it, I was like, oh, I'm going to check this out. And I was like, oh my God, I love this.
Is it a true crime kind of thing?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's about how in the 70s, the FBI started learning how to profile serial killers. And there's a serial killer named Edmund Kemper. And the guy who plays him is amazing. He looks so much, he's so like the real Edmund Kemper. And this guy is incredibly intelligent to the point where it's bizarre. Maybe I like the strangeness of it, but it was so funny because we featured Ed Brownlee. I always call him my Ed Cups. And he does these funny little people. And almost every artist that I know, art festival artist, has a collection of his. He is doing serial killer cereal bowls now. So my son bought me an Edmund Kemper and a John Wayne Gacy cereal bowl.
Love it.
Anytime I see somebody's artwork where they're doing, it fascinates me. But I also love Making of a Murderer, right?
That's the guy. Right. The first one was the guy from Wisconsin.
Yes.
And it's like he's convicted. Yeah, wasn't he like convicted, but he really wasn't, and then he actually became one.
Well,
because of the process?
That's why I'm not so sure that he did it.
There you go.
I am not so sure that he did it. So anyway, but there are some interesting stories. There's some super, super interesting stories. There's one about a woman in West Virginia who burned down her house, I think with her husband in it, to kill him. And then she claimed that she left the iron on or something like that, something big like that. Right. I mean, the thing is, I kill flies, but like I don't kill spiders or like.
Yeah, right.
I had to put some sticky traps in the studio because I cannot have the little mice in my studio.
Yeah.
And I will never use those again because he was like stuck and I had to smash him with a rock so that he didn't suffer. And I cried for 2 hours because I had to kill a mouse. So yeah. I don't understand how somebody could kill another person or even plan it or like do it. So I think it fascinates me.
Renee and I will be brushing our teeth after, we have watched a Dateline or something, getting ready for bed, and we'll look over at each other and she'll say to me, hey, by the way, if you ever just want to get a divorce, let's just do that. And let's not do this whole murder thing. I mean, it's just not necessary.
So much easier, right?
Yeah, it makes no sense why these people go to such crazy lengths to end their spouse's life.
Money, insurance money. It's always money. It's always money.
And it's always the husband, yeah.
Oh no, sometimes it's the wife. There is a story that I absolutely love, and I still want to do a piece about it. This woman was horribly, horribly, horribly abused by, I don't know if it was her boyfriend, but it was her children's father. She had 2 little kids. It's called, I think the documentary, it's actually quite old, called Every Day of My Fucking Life. And he just terrorized her to the point of like, I think one day she planned something and she killed him with a hammer. But I think her oldest child, who was kind of young, maybe under 10 or 12, something like that, helped her do it. But I'm like, she just was living on eggshells, and I'm an eggshell walker from way back. So I understand that. And I always wanted to do a girl with a bloody hammer with that caption. But, and some people absolutely, I sell a lot of my little girls with the hatchet, the bloody hatchets, there's something about it. It's not only me. It's not just me.
It's not. Kina, this was great. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit with me and talk about your process and your history. This was so fun.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled. I actually was trying to listen to the podcast right before I went to Winter Park, and I couldn't get something downloaded onto my phone or to access it, but I'm going to make a point. I have to have one of the young people figure that out for me. I swear to God, I have a problem with like stuff doesn't want to work around me sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
People don't believe me until they come and try to fix something of mine. They're like, yeah, there is something going on here.
This is weird.
Awesome. It was so awesome to meet you.
You're fun, and I appreciate you doing this.
I can't wait. Let's have dinner in Portland.
Let's do it. Absolutely. Okay. That'd be great.
Okay.
All right. See you later,
Kina.
Douglas.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Douglas, I loved that talk that you just had with Kina. Thanks so much for sitting down with her. It was a really, really good call to have her on the podcast.
Oh, thanks. That last conversation we had about the true crime, I thought, that's going to be a good wrap it up kind of thing, just kind of something that's, our personal interest. But it actually tied into her work and pieces she wants to make. And I kind of thought that was a nice little ending nugget.
Yeah, it really was. It was a nice way to kind of wrap it up. It was, and it ties into podcasts too, like what kind of podcasts we listen to, because I'm a big true crime podcast guy.
Awesome.
As long as it's professional, I mean, that was our big thing with doing this podcast. I'm like, but I hold us to a pretty high standard. So I appreciate you and Oliver helping us, especially get that professional edge.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that this project of ours is taking off, and our listener metrics have been growing. People are interested in what we're talking about, and we want to thank everybody for that.
Sponsorship was a necessity, Douglas, in order to keep this thing going and keep the wheels on. We've had quite a few donors giving us little donations here and there, some fairly large donations, but it's incredible to get sponsorship, and sponsorship that doesn't want to have editorial control. We still maintain complete editorial control of the podcast, but it's nice to get that validation from our peers as well as from the industries that we rely on.
And if you're a show or an organization that would like to sponsor an episode, feel free to contact us at our email at independentartistpodcast@gmail.com, and we will send you our information about sponsorship.
Or you can go to sigworthglass.com. That's SIGWARTH glass.com, and check out the podcast link there off his website.
And one last shout out to our friend of the podcast. We want to thank Katie Hoffman. Thank you for your donation.
Thanks, Katie. I appreciate you appreciating us.
Well, what do we have going next episode?
Yeah, next week I sat down with one of my favorite art show gurus, Daryl Thetford. It's going to be all about kind of saying no. It seemed to be the theme. Mm-hmm. You know, he has changed his work. His wife has changed her work. She is an art show artist, or has been in the past, wonderful painter. Daryl has been on the cutting edge of digital art for his entire career before there even was a digital art category. But so it's fascinating to sit down and talk with him about the beginnings of that kind of industry and where he sits and how many times he says no and how that ends up being very successful for him.
That's a hard thing to learn as someone who works for themselves, as a professional artist, how to draw the boundaries and just say, this is what I will do, this is what I won't do. We kind of try and make ourselves available to everybody at all times. Right. And so that's a nice topic I'm looking forward to hearing more about.
Yeah, we get opportunities all the time, and we have to say no to a lot of them. And I feel like this talk gives me courage going forward, just to reject shows. You don't have to do them just because you got them, right?
Or we can cherry pick the shows.
That's a better way to say it. That's why. Thank you, Mr. Yen. I'm Mr. Yang. We'll see you next week.
All right, everyone. Take care.
This podcast has been brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
And while you're at it, check out Will's website at willarmstrongart.com and my website at sigworthglass.com.
And remember to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.